All right, Kristen Holmes, you are here to help us unpack with all of your sources the political ramifications here, because as Katelyn and I noted, the former president is really speculating, but he's speculating in part in an effort to rile up the base. So what have you learned?
Right. So, we heard from Lindsey Graham, and I want to actually read to you what he said, because I feel like this is what I'm hearing from so many Trump allies and really the former president himself and his advisors. He said the prosecutor in New York has done more to help Donald Trump get elected president than each single person in America today. And that is what they really believe. They believe that this is going to help him politically. And we're already starting to see these Republicans rally around the former president. We heard from Speaker McCarthy. He said it was outrageous, this potential indictment. He went on to say that these committees should be investigating whether federal funds were used in this New York probe. And we also heard from someone else who is considering their own 2024 run, Mike Pence.
This is what the Manhattan DA says is their top priority. It just it reeks of the kind of political prosecution that we endured back in the days of the Russia hoax and the whole impeachment over a phone call. And the one thing I know is I know that former President Trump can take care of himself.
And of course, it was just 1 week ago that we were talking about how former Vice President Pence was talking at a closed-door dinner, and he gave his sharpest rebuke of the former president, talking about his actions on January 6th and clearly trying to distance himself from Trump. That's also clearly not the case today. And if you have any indication of where he or his allies believe, and that's Trump, this stands politically, he sent out a fundraising email about 10 minutes ago, fundraising off of this potential indictment, Paula.
That's remarkable. What's so interesting, though, is there is a difference, right, between January 6th, what happened on January 6th, and what's going on in Manhattan. I think intelligent minds, intelligent reporters can disagree about how strong the case is in Manhattan. But here, Trump's kind of muddying the waters by once again calling for people to protest on his behalf. Do you think that could backfire?
Well, look, I think that's what Donald Trump is good at, muddying the waters. And this is one of the things that we've seen for years, is that he gets in there and he jumbles it all around. We saw this with the documents case. It was clearly that the Biden and Trump documents case were different. Yeah. However, Trump muddied the waters and made it seem as though these two things were the same. This is what he does. And look, whether or not it will backfire, is yet to be seen. But we do know that this is somebody who, when he is put in these situations, when he is backed into a corner, when he is in legal trouble, he actually does succeed. He does actually rile up the base, and he does get that political support, Paula.
That's a great point. I want to turn back to Katelyn, because she and I, we cover all of the many investigations into former President Trump for quite some time now. But really comparatively, the Manhattan case is not one they've been worried about because it's not one of the stronger ones, right? As compared to Georgia or, of course, the special counsel.
Yeah. I mean, politics is one thing. So he's going to attack any of these investigations. Very similarly, we keep seeing the rhetoric very similar toward, he's calling witch hunt. I think that was in his statement today. We've been hearing that since the Mueller investigation. But this is a little bit different in that it is something that the Southern District of New York, the federal prosecutors, had looked at. They decided not to charge him. The Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg, took this over after Cy Vance, his predecessor, also didn't bring the case. And so this really has been one of those cases that the facts are there. It's had quite an arc as an investigation. It's gone up and down. Will they, won't they? It is not the same thing as January 6th. That is like a train that has moved ahead at a steady clip. The House bringing in witnesses, federal investigators bringing in witnesses, the Georgia grand jury action. This is a much more up and down thing. And so what happens with this case, a lot of people, a lot of the lawyers that I've talked to are wondering, okay, if they bring this, can they win it? If it goes to trial, can they convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that Donald Trump himself would be guilty if he is charged?
Likely the big next question. Katelyn, Polantz, Kristen Holmes, ladies, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. And that Polo, thank you as well. Forgot about you at the courthouse, so thank you for your reporting. But this really tees up a great question for our next guest, which is senior legal analyst Elie Honig. Elie, I think the big question here, more so than even will Trump be indicted, is why now? We're talking about conduct that occurred around 7 years ago. This investigation has been going on for 4 or 5 years. As Katelyn noted, other investigations have looked into this, not charged. What do you make of this question? Why is this suddenly heating up over the past few weeks?
It's a great question, Paula, and I think it's a fair one to ask. And just to set the timeline here, these payments were made in mid to late 2016. That's before the 2016 election. Then in 2018, when Donald Trump was president, that's when the feds picked it up, the Southern District of New York, but they could not indict Donald Trump at the time because he was the sitting president. The next important moment in the timeline is January of 2021. That's when Donald Trump left office, and as I've reported, the Southern District of New York had a series of meetings at that point deciding, should we charge him with this criminally or not? We know the decision there was no. And then, as Katelyn just said, there was about a year or so after that when Cy Vance was the Manhattan DA. He did not charge this. And now here we are 6.5 to 7 years later, and Alvin Bragg has made the decision to charge this. I think it's a fair point, and I think it, in some sense, undermines the seriousness of the case, and I think it will be an issue at trial.
You make a great point, because there are a lot of questions from the Trump legal team, for example, about whether locally elected prosecutors should be able to investigate the former president. And as you and I have talked about, there's such a difference between Manhattan, where it doesn't appear that they have any new evidence or new witnesses, though they might. We could learn about that in the future. But down in Georgia, for example, there, even though there are the same questions about locally elected prosecutors, there appears to be so much evidence. So again, outstanding question. Why now? Maybe the district attorney will answer that sometime soon. But even if they bring an indictment, how likely is it that that would go to trial? And if it goes to trial, how likely are they to get a conviction?
So I think it's highly likely that if there's an indictment, it goes to trial, because Donald Trump does not strike me as the pleading guilty type. In order to plead guilty, he'd have to go into court and say, yes, I committed a crime. How likely is it to result in a conviction? That'll depend, of course, on the strength of the evidence and the witnesses. Based on what we know, though, Paula, I think it's an absolute mistake to say this is some sort of slam dunk or smoking gun. We know there are checks. We know that the hush money was paid, but it's important to understand, paying hush money is not a crime, and it would not be the crime here. The crime is in how Donald Trump's people, his campaign, logged that payment. If they falsely claimed it was attorney's fees, which they did, that could be a crime. But you have to tie that to Donald Trump himself directly. And really, as far as we know, the only person who directly does that is Michael Cohen, who has all sorts of credibility issues.
And let's talk about those issues. Michael Cohen on the stand as a former prosecutor. How would you try to use him to bolster your case? And what are the risks there? What are his vulnerabilities?
Yeah, so it is completely normal, common for prosecutors to make cases by calling cooperating witnesses who've pled guilty to being part of that criminal activity. I think on the one hand, Michael Cohen certainly had access to what was happening. He was right in the middle of this. He will be able to tell the jury what in his testimony exactly happened blow by blow. And there's an argument that ever since he pled guilty, he has come clean and he has been truthful. On the other hand, the cross-examination of him is going to be blistering. You can count on Donald Trump's lawyers, if we ever get to this moment, cross-examining Michael Cohen on the fact that he's been convicted of perjury, he's been convicted of financial fraud and tax fraud having nothing to do with Donald Trump, that he has previously said that these payments were perfectly legal and had nothing to do with the campaign, and the fact, Paula, that Michael Cohen, with every fiber in his being, despises Donald Trump. He can't open his mouth without disparaging Donald Trump personally. We can argue about whether that's justified or not, but it absolutely means that he's not going to be an impartial witness. So he's going to be a dynamic witness. He could be very important for the prosecution, but he's going to get banged up on cross-examination. You can bet on that.
And it'll be really interesting to see who this other witness is. It will be on Monday. We're trying to report that out, but that'll be really interesting to see and maybe give us an indication of how close we are to a possible indictment. I also want to ask you about this. Back when the Stormy Daniels case first broke back in 2018, months before the scandal was really acknowledged, the former president, he was asked about this, and his first comments came in response to a reporter. They were on board Air Force One in April. They were asked about the payments made to Stormy Daniels. This was a month before the 2016 election that these payments were made. And this is what he said aboard the plane. Let's take a listen.
Did you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels?
No.
Why did Michael Cohen make it if there was no truth to your allegation?
Well, you have to ask Michael Cohen. Michael's an attorney, and you'll have to ask Michael Cohen.
Do you know where he got the money to make that payment?
I don't know.
All right, clearly not a crime to lie or give false statements to reporters, but how might those comments potentially impact any possible prosecution?
So, Paula, you can bet prosecutors are going to use that video. It will be admissible evidence because the argument will be he's lying here. Why is he lying? You would argue as a prosecutor, he's lying because he knows he has done wrong and he's trying to cover up. But I think the response from the Trump team, and people can decide what's more persuasive, is The reason he was lying there is the same reason he made the hush money payments in the first place, to try to avoid personal humiliation to himself and his family. And if that's the reason why they made a hush money payment to Stormy Daniels, that's not going to be a campaign finance crime, because then it would not count as a campaign donation. So that's the back and forth that you should expect to see in court if and when this ever gets there.
Elie, Honig, thank you so much.
Thanks, Paul. Talk to you soon.